What's going on, ladies and gents? Today I'm doing a video on absorption lines as support and resistance. It's something I've recently added to my arsenal, and it's really been a game changer and added quite a lot of clarity. So I'm going to share that today, run through it, and then we'll just maybe go over some things at the end. So just going to jump straight in. As always, this is applicable across all time frames. Today we're going to look at the 15-minute, which is on the left, and then zoom in on the 1 minute, and I might do some high time frame stuff, but I'm not sure it's necessary. So the basis of it is, if you're in the order flow group, obviously you've got the absorption lines, using those as support and resistance pretty much. So how I'm applying this to, or how I've integrated this into my sort of trading strategy, my trading plan, is I'll come into whichever session, because I'm trading London now as well as New York. I sit down, start my day, and I'll look at the high time frame, the daily and the 4 hour, and I'll use this as well. Absorption lines, whether we're going to be facing sort of resistance or if there's levels of support, etc. And then that sort of gives you a bias for the day, whether you're going to be bearish or bullish, etc. So on the left here, I've just picked some random price action, something that's clean. We're looking at an Asian session going into London, but mainly paying attention to the the absorption lines. So obviously here, I'm hoping my mouse is big enough. Let's say this is the base of price action, starting a new day. So makes sense, right? So buyers establish a base here, and we've got the sell absorption line here, which basically shows the presence of a large seller. But in this case, you know, maybe we've come into the session and we're expecting bulls on the day. Perhaps on the higher time frame, there's a passive buyer down at the bottom, or given where we're at in price, I'm assuming this is around about the buy base, which we've recently come into on the higher time frame. So we come into a buy base, and then we have a structure shift, and this sell absorption flips into support, and then quite a nice entry. And it takes out the guessing when you're looking at the 15-minute, because if there's no absorption line there acting as support or resistance, there probably isn't a trade. So it's easier to sit on your hands when you can see, you know, whether a base has been established or not, or whether support or resistance has been established. In this case, if you were trying to time the bottom, as most experienced traders will know, if you're trying to time bottoms and this and that, it's highly stressful. You're going to get wicked out quite a lot, and we don't really want that. Another thing I'll just quickly mention is I like how this lines up with the VWAP as well, both the center line and the standard deviation for over support on the overbought line. Anyway, so price action, we establish a base here with a structure shift, price comes back, find support on the resistance line. At this point you could drop down to the 1 minute, most likely find a delta held pattern or something like that. I'm noticing there is just the two types. You've got the reversal pattern, which is a delta held, and then like a continuation. This works really well for like comp trades as well, which I'll show you. It's currently showing on the 1 minute on the right. So we get our base retest or our support turned resistance retest, and then we look for an entry, whatever your confluences may be. Here we've got a VWAP, we've got a structure shift, we've got a retest of support turned resistance, etc. And then you take an entry, and you can just target the previous support turned resistance on the previous leg for a nice tidy trade. So 1 to 4 with an 80 tick stop loss, 300 ticks. It's a very clean trade. That's if you didn't want to hold it. But if you're looking for clean momentum trades where you're just in, up and out, like this is starting to prove as a very clean system if you can control yourself enough to wait for a correct entry, which this gives you the clarity to that doing anything otherwise, you realize how redundant that is. And what I've realized is trading at this point, it comes down to self-control. Now that you've got a plan together and you can see everything clearly, do you have the self-control to wait for the confluences and get in on a good entry? So that's one trade, and then we come back again, and I've annotated here, got a strong buy level. Buyers are printing a fresh absorption, and just for those people that might not be familiar, the absorption line represents a passive buyer, and on this level they have absorbed sellers, so it's basically a strong level, or a passive buyer, which is limit orders, large limit orders. So we've taken our first trade, caught that, great. As we know, have to pull back. At this point, we see some sell absorption coming in, or passive seller coming in, and then you'll get this sort of ranging, and it's pretty much a battle between this level, and you'll get to see this as well. This, like, you begin to anticipate consolidation. We've come into test, obviously, this base, and then buyers are trying to support it. In this case, they win, and we get the same thing again. After this consolidation, we get our structure shift, and I've just extended this. So these absorption lines, it's already red max, there you go. So this one's not as clean, but you could get it if you were sort of anticipating the move and whatnot. Given that we're already bullish, this is more of a continuation move. And on the 1 minute, most likely here, we'll go into it in the final example, you'd look for this entry on the 1 minute, most likely it'd break through, pull back, test the absorption line, trap sellers, and then off you go. Same again, you're in, a big seller's broken, that brings momentum, you get a half decent entry, you wouldn't need to have a stop there. I trade with an 80 tick stop, that's 20 points, which is more than enough if you're entering in the right places. So that's another 1 to 5, 100 points, thereabouts, or just under 80, 100 points. Straight up again to previous absorption line in the last leg. So the accuracy is pretty nuts, and if you just go around and start marking this thing, then if you start marking this on a regular, or stumbling on my words here, if you get into the habit or start practicing marking these as support and resistance, it starts becoming very clear. And at this point we sweep a previous high. That then leads to profit taking, which we see come back down to where a previous seller was strong, and they try and defend. Obviously we've got the VWAP here as support as well, but what happens? They get trapped. So you start seeing trapped sellers. At this point, you know, if you missed this sell, because there is one there's a delta hell pattern. You know, if you're bullish on the daily, you wouldn't be looking for a sell, but if you weren't paying attention to the higher time frame, or you know, was zoomed in, you might see this as a sell up, which it is. It's quite a hefty one, but you might expect it to keep going. Say you snag a nice entry, say you're an absolute beast and you catch that. Maybe you get greedy, you think it's going to go down to retest the base or something. We've got this strong buy level here. We're bullish overall so far in the session. Push back down. Sellers push again from their level, but they get trapped. Buyers start putting up a fight again. And then we continue with the trend. So in this section here, that is now this on the 1 minute. And as I've said, price action is fractal, so this works on the 15 minute, the daily, the 4 hour, the 10T. So this is your 1 minute, and it's that same range. It comes into the buy area, and it's pretty obvious that there's buy presence on the 1 minute. Look at all of these absorption lines. And then the same thing again. You got your sell absorptions here, you just extend that across. You're waiting for the turnaround. You get your buyer push, and again, if you're chomping at the bit to get into a trade, maybe you enter here when it's going to be hectic because they're turning price around and they're going to fight. Chances are you're going to get stopped out by some volatility. So you wait for the structure to mature. This shows the intent, pulls back, okay? You might get an entry down here, but at this point, sellers have shown a push from here. And it's okay once it's played out, but if you're watching it live, the safest bet is to wait for it to find support on the previous resistance. And it's the same every single time. Once it's blasted through, you've got your initial push. And it always happens, you'll get your buyers showing intent with an initial push. And this is where people, if they're trying to take an aggressive entry, maybe they'll get in because they think it's just going to take off without them, right? Which seldom happens. They think they're going to get an aggressive entry, or price is going to push from here because we've trapped all of these sellers and now we're ready to go. So they'll get an entry like here, thinking it's going to go to the moon, and then they get fucked. Because why? Because it's hit a sell base still, and it needs to retest. And if we look here, same as I showed you on the other charts to take profit on the support turn resistance, or resistance turn support in this case. Here, look where the take profit is. So it needs to, this is a good point, I'm actually glad I brought this up. So your first push in a move is going to test the opposite resistance first, and then you'll get that initial pullback for so. I've done it times innumerable where, again, you've been patient, you've waited for ages for price to come into your buy AOI, and then all this crazy shit starts happening and you're getting fucking FOMO in, and then you think, oh, fucking price is going to take off without me, I'm going to hop in, and then it shoots up, they get momentum, and then boom, it comes back and wrecks you. It's because you've entered on immature structure, you've FOMO'd in, etc. It needs to test the sell side resistance first, and that's what then gives you your pullback. So you wait for that. Now the structure's maturing, it pulls back, and then you can get a proper entry. Even here's debatable because it's a con trade. It's not that there's no delta held here or anything like that. So it's best to wait patiently so sellers don't continue or get aggressive or manipulate, etc. The safest bet is to wait until the resistance is flipped to support. In this case, it happens after this push through, pulls back, traps the seller on the 1 minute, and then you can look for your 10T or 5T confluences and take an entry, and, well, that goes on forever. But that, as I say, there's two entry types really. You've got your delta held and then your con entry. This is the con entry, and this plays out the same way every single time. You have this initial resistance that gets broken, the resistance on the previous leg gets tested, price pulls back, and then buyers push. And as I love to say, and when you start marking this up, you'll start to understand what I mean, the side that you're favoring regains their footing. So what do I mean by that? In this case, sellers are here, buyers have pushed and failed to find support on this resistance and pushed down, and then people that are bearish or trapped too zoomed in, they might think, oh, we're selling, and then they, similar to the buyer entering on immature structure, they'll enter here thinking, oh, it's going to push off without me, and instead what does it do? Pushes up again, buyers regain their footing, and boom, off it goes. So yeah, this is a brilliant way, and probably the best way, to not get manipulated and just to add extra clarity to the markets, in my opinion. It gives you it's basically the tool to not enter on immature structure. Or another good thing is, if it's consolidating, most likely there's no clear support or resistance presenting itself. You'll have scattered buys or sell absorption on either side, or you'll have none at all because there's no volume and it'll just go sideways. And then when you start seeing it printing, you know that there's a big player coming in. So there's plenty of benefits to watching this stuff. Let me just check my notes because we're wrapping up. So yeah, support and resistance, the absorption lines, we've gone through that. Regaining footing, we've gone through that. Base retests. So with this, same as always, you know, if we're watching this move, this base is now tested, so we can mark that as tested, and we're not going to expect price to come back down to that. If it does, it's probably bearish and it's going to break. And then at the next point, say price just shot straight up and didn't retest the base, you wouldn't want to then look for continuation trades because it needs to come back and test the base. So again, it's a great way to not get manipulated. You wouldn't be looking, if price just pushed without retesting, you wouldn't be looking for buys in this area, because you know it needs to pull back before it can move up. Again, the market moves on traps and manipulation. It needs to, and then in that way it makes it quite predictable. I believe, oh, one more little nugget. I've noticed that sells are a fair bit harder than buys in this sense, or they're not as clean, mainly because we're bullish, or NQ's bullish overall. So you'll find that the sells will retest like the upper limit as much as they possibly can. So even if there's no absorption lines on the 1 minute or the 15, you'll see a lot of sell moves, and they will move off from the 10T, the uppermost sell absorption line on the 10T. So that's another thing to look out for. So if you were looking for a sell, when you see the structure forming, paying attention to that. Let's see if I can find an example. So I've just pulled this up randomly. So if you were looking for a sell, that's your uppermost absorption line. Most of the time, it will retest that. So, you know, you might, trying to think of the best way to describe this. It's difficult because I've just found some random price action. So, yeah, let's go with this. So, in this scenario, if you were looking for a pullback trade, say you were looking for sells, and comes up here, perhaps doesn't give any confirmation, so you don't take a trade in this case, you're going to wait for a pullback, which is the most sensible thing to do. In this case, you know, if you didn't wait for a pullback to the most upper absorption, you might get in here, target, let's say you're going for a long trade, you want it to keep going. You've gotten in quite early in terms of overall structure, it's not matured yet. You get in a decent entry, it comes down, you expect 400 ticks, etc. Instead, what happens is you get that pullback, as you pretty much always do, comes back, takes you out at break even, if you've moved your stops to break even, of course, and then price continues without you. And in the scenario I'm referring to, price just keeps going down. This upper absorption is the one to pay attention to, so waiting for a retest of that and then getting your entry is, if you journal it and you keep an eye on it, you'll see what I mean. Whenever a sell comes along on the 10T, it's usually an extreme retest, and knowing that and having the confidence to enter off that upper absorption is a bit of a game changer, because sellers are sneaky like that. Right, I've been babbling for 20 minutes, so I'm going to wrap it up. I haven't been doing many videos recently because I've been really trying to figure out my plan and become a better trader holistically, and then there's been quite a lot of changes in my life, so I've been thinking about maybe doing a like a life update on how I've changed things, or how things have changed outside of trading, and then ultimately how I've adapted and my plans, etc. If anyone is interested in that, leave a comment or send me a PM or DM, and I'll do a video. If not, then I'll just do breakdowns as and when. But yeah, that's everything. Thank you for watching. Take care.